Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something pretty fundamental.
Mm.
What happens when the challenge isn't just, a creative block, but something deeper, like a snag in our actual thinking, our ability to really understand and engage critically?
Yeah, that's a big one. How do people even navigate that one?
Exactly. How does an individual manage that internal sort of friction? And then how does society deal with it, especially now?
With all the information overload, AI,
Yeah.
it's a lot.
Right. How do we find real meaning when there's so much noise, maybe even manipulation,
Yeah.
and this shift towards AI-driven content?
Well, these are definitely the big questions. And to dig into them, we've got a really interesting mix of sources you pulled together.
Hmm.
We've got insights from Buddhist psychology, different meditation styles, very personal stories about illness,
Right. Those are powerful.
and then social political analysis, even thoughts on art and improvisation. Seems scattered, maybe?
A little bit.
But actually, when you look closer, the connections are, well, quite surprising, especially for the core issues you just raised.
That's the hope. So the aim for this deep dive is to sort of sift through all this, find the key nuggets, and offer a clearer way to think about these complex problems.
Give people some food for thought
Yeah.
without it being overwhelming.
Exactly. Okay, so let's start by unpacking the nature of thought itself. What are the potential problems baked in?
Okay, a good starting point is definitely the Buddhist perspective. We looked at understanding our mind Buddhist psychology, and it describes mind consciousness as uh, incredibly broad,
Broad how?
capable of perceiving pretty much everything, mental stuff, physical things. It's this huge capacity.
But that capacity isn't always easy.
Right. That leads into what another source mentioned, the one on meditation techniques. It talks about the noisy chatter of the mind.
Ah, yes, that constant internal monologue.
Exactly. That stream of thoughts that can just, get in the way of feeling calm or focused, like static on the radio, as you said before we started recording.
Yeah, good analogy.
And then Zen mind, beginner's mind, takes it a step further with this idea of the karmic spinning mind.
Karmic spinning mind. Okay, tell me more.
Think of it like getting caught in loops,
Yeah.
right? Worrying about ego stuff, what people think, comparing yourself, that kind of thing.
Oh, I know that feeling.
The text suggests this focus on our own narratives, our ego, actually clouds our ability to see reality clearly. It blocks that sort of Buddha-like view. We get lost in our own stories.
It really makes you question how reliable our own perception is, doesn't it? We feel so sure sometimes, but is it the whole picture?
Which ties into mind hacks
Yeah.
and this concept of fluent processing. Really fascinating.
Doing processing, like things flowing easily.
Sort of. It's that feeling of familiarity, like, oh, I've seen this before. It happens super fast.
Okay.
But the source points out that speed doesn't mean it's a deep, actual memory retrieval. It might just feel familiar because it's easy for our brain to process right then.
So it feels like remembering, but it might just be easy recognition.
Exactly. Which definitely raises questions about how much we can trust that immediate gut feeling of knowing something.
Okay, so our minds can be noisy, get stuck in ego loops, and even trick us with feelings of familiarity. Um, how do we as individuals deal with all that? How do we find stability or even meaning in the middle of potential chaos?
Well, several sources offer some really practical approaches.
Yeah,
There's mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR,
right. I've heard of
that's
that.
presented as this solid evidence-based practice,
Sure.
good for people dealing with chronic pain, illness, anxiety, but also just for anyone curious about meditation who wants something structured,
And the core of it's
bringing awareness to the present moment, but crucially, without judging what you find there.
okay. And then there was another one, primordial sound meditation, PSM.
Yeah, that's a different technique. It comes from the Vedic tradition, revived by Deepak Chopra and David Simon.
How does that one work?
It's a mantra base. You get a personal mantra, and the idea is to use it to quiet that noisy mind we were just talking about,
Yeah.
to access the deeper stillness.
Interesting how different paths lead towards that same goal of inner quiet.
It really is.
Yeah.
And the power of now just hammers home this focus on the present.
Yeah, Tolle's work, big emphasis there.
Absolutely. It argues that, the quality of your consciousness right now is what shapes everything your experience, your future, dwelling on the past. That just keeps the suffering going.
Anchor in the now.
That's the core message.
We also had that unnamed excerpt which seemed to echo this. It talked about focusing attention on inner feelings.
Yeah.
Acknowledging something called the pain body.
Yes, the pain body.
Hmm.
It's described as like an accumulation of past emotional pain. It can almost feel like this energetic thing inside you.
Okay, so old baggage, basically.
Kind of.
Yeah.
And the practice suggested is to become aware of it, notice it, observe it just as a sensation, but without getting sucked into the story or the emotions tied to it.
Like being a detached witness to your own feelings.
Precisely.
And connecting this to finding meaning. Well, man's search for meaning is just incredibly powerful on this.
Absolutely profound. Viktor Frankl's work.
It argues that even in the absolute worst suffering, people can find a why, a purpose, and that helps them endure almost anyhow.
The examples in there. People holding on to hope in concentration camps. It's just staggering. It really shows that human capacity for meaning.
It totally shifts the focus, doesn't it? Away from external circumstances and onto our internal response, our ability to find purpose no matter what.
It does. And that connects, maybe surprisingly, to the 40-day prosperity plan.
How so? That sounds quite different.
Well, it talks about our inner spiritual consciousness being the real source of fulfillment. It urges letting go of the idea that money is the only source of security or happiness.
Ah, okay. Finding security within rather than just externally.
Exactly. And prosperity consciousness builds on that, suggesting our outer world often mirrors our inner state.
So what you feel inside influences what you see outside.
That's the idea. And it highlights gratitude, focusing on what you have as a way to boost that prosperity consciousness, shifting from lack to appreciation.
Interesting. And there was one more on abundance.
Infinite abundance. Yeah, it suggested that true manifestation, creating what you want, comes from a place of already feeling abundant, with an expectation of sharing.
Not just asking because you feel needy.
Right, it contrasts that with manifesting purely out of lack. It implies a generous outward focus is key.
So taking all these individual strategies together, it really seems to be about developing inner awareness, right? Meditation, focusing on the present, accepting feelings without judgment, actively looking for meaning beyond just stuff.
Yeah, building that strong inner core seems to be the common thread. These practices create a kind of mental space.
Space to step back from the noise.
Exactly. Step back from the noisy mind, the karmic spinning. It gives you a bit more agency over your thoughts and reactions.
Okay, that covers the individual angle, but we live in societies, right? How does a whole society navigate these potential pitfalls in thinking? Are there collective approaches?
Well, above all, don't wobble. Ours an interesting thought. It suggests the mind cycle of happy and unhappy is just that, a cycle, impermanent, like a wheel turning.
So societal moods also shift. Nothing stays the same.
That's the implication. It's a reminder that collective states, good or bad, are also temporary.
Then we had that piece on leadership in crisis.
Right, the unnamed excerpt. It really emphasized decisive action. Leaders needing to remove roadblocks so the team can actually perform.
Streamlining things, basically. Getting stuff done when times are tough.
Yeah. Suggests clear direction is vital for collective survival.
And then there was that slightly more unusual idea from the divine cosmos, too.
Ah, yes, the global energetic grid idea. Ancient civilizations understanding counter-rotating energy fields, creating stability.
Okay, so maybe not literal energy fields for us now, but as a metaphor.
Exactly. A metaphor for societal balance, perhaps. Interconnectedness, strong communities, good communication, shared values, all contributing to stability.
Right, like different forces needing to work together. Makes sense. Shifting to more modern times into the fourth turning, had some observations about millennials.
Yeah, it noted this tendency towards, collectivizing the economy for community goals. But also, surprisingly, finding them quite conventional in cultural and social norms otherwise. So it's a complex picture. Collective action in some areas, traditional views in others.
Interesting mix. And then Organized 2N brought a very practical angle.
Very much so. It stressed how crucial collective action and public participation are, specifically in regulatory processes to stop bad projects.
So people getting involved in local government, that kind of thing.
Pretty much. Active civic engagement, shaping society's direction.
It really brings home that a healthy society isn't passive, is it? It needs people to show up, take responsibility, work together.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's pivot to something really relevant now. Navigating manipulation and this growing influence of AI.
Yeah, this feels critical, and Animal Farm is such a potent, timeless warning here.
Orwell's classic. How does it connect?
Remember how the animals vaguely recall the original rules? No dealing with humans, no money. But slowly, their memory, their collective understanding gets twisted, manipulated.
Until they believe the opposite. Yeah.
It just shows how fragile collective knowledge can be, how easily narratives can be controlled.
Scary. And that ties into Simpsons and philosophy, surprisingly.
It does, through the idea of hyper-ironism.
Hyper-ironism.
Yeah, how comedy, The Simpsons often relies on making fun of things, of
Hmm.
people, sometimes as a positive social point, right?
Hmm.
Satire.
Sure.
But it makes you question, how do we interpret media? Can we always tell the real intent, especially when manipulation might be in play? Are we getting the joke, or is the joke on us?
That's a good question, especially now. And then philosophy of science fiction film added another layer.
Hmm. The idea that human existence finds meaning within limits, within our finite human context.
Okay. So what's the implication for AI?
Well, it raises big questions about a world increasingly shaped by AI that could be potentially limitless. If our meaning is tied to our human scale, our limitations, what happens when those boundaries blur because of superintelligent AI?
Wow. Yeah, that's a heavy thought. It makes you think about this term people are using, AI slop.
AI slop.
Yeah, this potential flood of just easily generated, maybe shallow AI content. Could that actually erode our critical thinking, our ability to find real meaning?
That's the concern, isn't it? If we're just constantly bombarded with stuff that lacks depth, or maybe is even designed to manipulate our attention.
What does that do to us, individually and collectively?
Exactly. Does it lead to a sort of homogenization of thought, a weakening of our ability to think for ourselves
Yeah.
critically, and ultimately, maybe, does it diminish our capacity for authentic meaning and connection?
Okay. So, pulling all these threads together,
Hmm.
it's clear we're facing some pretty deep challenges, not just creatively, but right down to how we think, how we engage critically.
It impacts us individually and definitely as a society.
Yeah. But despite the variety of sources, some strong themes did emerge, wouldn't you say?
I think so. Definitely this idea of developing inner awareness, whether it's through specific meditation or just that mindful attention to the present, to our inner states, that seems crucial.
For individual resilience, right?
Yeah.
Finding meaning personally.
Absolutely. It seems key for navigating all this complexity.
And then on the societal level,
It really looks like active engagement is vital. Participating, staying informed, being vigilant against manipulation, critical thinking as a collective practice.
the lessons from Animal Farm about shared understanding being fragile, they feel really pertinent now.
Extremely relevant. We need that ongoing critical engagement with the stories shaping our world.
Which leads us to a final thought, really, for everyone listening.
Yeah.
As we navigate this world, the information overload, potential manipulation, the rise of AI, how can we, each of us and all of us together, proactively cultivate that clarity of thought? How do we foster shared meaning?
Mm. How do we work towards a better way forward, a path that really benefits everyone?
Yeah. It's definitely something to think about, something to engage with in our own lives.